What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with some more news. Join us now as we look at the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including Shane McMahon running Raw, Bret Hart content removed from the WWE Network, WWE may have ruined a huge spoiler for NXT TakeOver, the reason behind Renee Young quitting WWE, COVID ended a superstar's push, former WCW superstar Buff Bagwell is seriously injured, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Now, let's get right into the news. As our first story looks at Shane taking over Raw. Yes, Shane McMahon is back on WWE TV as the man behind Raw Underground, but he may also be getting a big promotion backstage. In an exclusive report, Sportskeeda's Alex McCarthy revealed, "One source in WWE has told me Shane is being considered to take Raw off Bruce Pritchard's hands, leaving him to concentrate on SmackDown. Other sources that I've posed this information to couldn't give concrete confirmation, though judging by the work behind the scenes, they can believe it." Another layer to this story is that Pritchard making no secret about the fact that he'd like to lighten his workload and he's been struggling with the long hours. McCarthy pointed out that Shane has been helping behind the scenes for some time now. For example, he helped craft this year's Men's Royal Rumble and he's worked with his dad at Gorilla Position. McCarthy also noted in a tweet that it's a move that would ease the workload on Bruce Pritchard, and Shane has been involved behind the scenes plenty the past 12 months. Shane McMahon is well known for thinking outside the box, and he may have some ideas on how to freshen things up on the Red brand. You may recall Shane tried to get Papa Vince to buy the UFC back before it became a mega success. The question fans have to ask is whether Shane will have any ability to convince Vince to let him try things differently, or whether Vince will continue to do things his way. Next up, Bret Hart's content has been removed from the WWE Network. Now, the network is brimming with content from a number of promotions and superstars, but one area you won't be seeing is the Bret Hart content. Ringside News' Felix Upton revealed, "For some reason, WWE Network has removed several Bret Hart collections from the library. It's not known why they took down these collections, but they are no longer available. These included a number of documentaries." Now, we wouldn't worry, as Bret Hart's relationship with the WWE seems to be okay. I mean, even though he turned up on AEW, but they can't be that petty, right? Surely this has something to do with some copyright reasons, as more than likely all of these documentaries include Canadian Stampede footage, something the WWE doesn't have any copyright to. Now WWE knows how it feels to get content removed. Next up, WWE may have ruined a big match at NXT TakeOver. Now, we're warning you now, there's big spoilers ahead, so if you don't want to know these, move ahead onto the next story using the timestamps in the description down below. Now, as fans have seen throughout the years, one department in the WWE doesn't always know what the other is doing. A new example of this is a potential problem generated by WWE Shop. Ringside News recently revealed that Karrion Kross was featured in a WWE Shop ad with the NXT title draped over his shoulder. This was in error and then deleted. It was still captured and is making the rounds online. Was this an error, or is the WWE working the fans again in the hope that more fans will tune in to see Kross challenge NXT champion Keith Lee? If Kross does win, the WWE needs to have a long walk with its shop employees. Next up, a WWE Draft 2020 update. Now, Triple H briefly discussed the WWE Draft during his NXT TakeOver conference call, and according to Wrestling News' Paul Davis, Triple H did not give a specific date, but said it would be happening later this year. The Wrestling Observer newsletter's Dave Meltzer recently reported that the WWE Draft is currently scheduled for October. Now, the draft does allow the company to shake things up, but last year's draft did little to change the scenery. Instead, it seemed like a glorified way to maintain the status quo. Let's hope they make things a little more interesting this year. Next up, COVID ended a WWE superstar's push. The pandemic led to a number of changes in the WWE, including the pushes for some wrestlers as some superstars sat out due to concerns about infecting others with the virus. One such star was Riddick Moss, who won the 24/7 championship and began defending it on a regular basis before abruptly dropping the belt. Now it appears there is a reason why Moss disappeared from TV. Fightful Select reports that Moss's brother was at risk for the coronavirus due to having cystic fibrosis, and that Paul Heyman pulled Moss from TV to protect his brother and keep heat off Moss for wanting to sit out. Rumor has it the WWE is still behind pushing Moss, but that remains to be seen. Next up, Buff Bagwell has been seriously injured. Former WCW superstar Buff Bagwell, aka Marcus Bagwell, was recently hurt in a motor vehicle accident on 16th August 2020, with the Cobb County Public Safety's office website announcing, according to investigators, a black 2013 Chevrolet Tahoe, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, was traveling west on Cumberland Boulevard, approaching Cumberland Parkway when the driver lost control while negotiating a curve. The Chevrolet Tahoe collided with the center median and metal fence within median before continuing west across the eastbound lanes. The Chevy then collided with the curb before colliding into a freestanding bathroom at the Cobb County Transit bus station. The driver of the Chevy was 50-year-old Marcus Bagwell, who was transported to Wellstar Kenstone Hospital with serious injuries. Investigators believe Bagwell was impaired by prescription medication during the collision. Now sadly, Bagwell has struggled with substance abuse issues in the past, and it remains to be seen whether alcohol and drugs played a role in his accident. Hopefully he's okay, and thankfully nobody was injured or even killed, but he clearly needs help. Next up, Chris Jericho criticizes John Cena's mic skills, offering an honest opinion. Chris Jericho is a gifted performer in the WWE and on the microphone, so what does he think of one of WWE's biggest stars' ability to cut promos? Speaking on a Saturday Night Special YouTube show, Le Champion stated, "I always thought Cena did great promos. He was a little bit underrated. Cena was very good at understanding his crowd, understanding his audience, and really connecting with them, whether it was teenagers or chicks or whatever. He was always really good, and he could be super goofy, is super goofy, but also could be very serious and make you believe what he was saying. So I think that is an underrated guy. And also Hulk Hogan in the 80s. Love him or hate him, John Cena was a key figure in the WWE for 2 decades, and his legacy as the face that runs a place is undeniable." Next up, the reason behind why Renee Young is leaving WWE. Renee Young's announcement that she's leaving the WWE took the wrestling world by surprise, but those familiar with some recent events have offered a reason why. Speaking on the Wrestling Observer Radio, Meltzer discussed a possible reason for Renee Young's departure. Her final week in the company is actually SummerSlam weekend. As far as the reason, I mean, if you look at the timing, I think it's pretty safe to say that the whole COVID thing is probably a huge part of this. Just so you know again, she wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people who got COVID, and a lot of people never got calls from the top people in the company, and several of them were unhappy, but you know her situation is different. As we reported weeks back, Young was infected with the virus but never received any calls from WWE higher-ups to see how she was doing. Do you think WWE has a frosty relationship with Young since her husband Jon Moxley left the company? Let us know in the comments down below. Next up, how Triple H handles arguments with Vince. Triple H has made the successful transition from WWE superstar to Executive Vice President of Global Talent Strategy and Development, a role many feel he's excelled at given NXT's success in building new stars and preparing wrestlers for the WWE style. However, like any workplace environment, there are bound to be disagreements with his boss, Mr. McMahon. Now in Helmsley's case, he finds himself in a delicate situation as he's also Vince's son-in-law. Speaking on the Bill Simmons podcast, Triple H discussed the special dynamics involved in their relationship.
Now, I would imagine it's unique. Look, anybody, if you ever read books on it or see shows on it or anything else, family business is difficult, right? Because it's not, you don't walk away from it, and you don't,
right.
You don't hang up the phone, or you don't leave the office and go home and it's done and you forget about it, and it's 24/7 of your life, and it's every component of it, and it affects every component of it. So it's very unique and very difficult, and there's a lot of factors, and even how you react in business to each other, because it's family, and you can treat your family different than you would treat everybody else, and there's just so many components to it,
However, what happens when he has an argument with Vince? Triple H noted that they do come up, but that...
I think for both of us, we kind of get over that. Yeah, and you have moments and you have things that happen and come up and whatever, but then you get past it and you get over it. And look, for me, the other thing too is for me that while it's all business, if it meant the difference between my kids having their grandfather in their life and not, and that was the call on business, I step away. If it became that big of a problem, I would walk. Because it's not worth that at the end of the day. But it's unique. Family business is tough, but it's awesome. It really is. I wouldn't change a thing.
We would love to be the proverbial fly on the wall when Hunter and Vinnie Mac have their arguments. When both men have a passion for the business, and it would be fascinating to see where their visions differ. And finally, did a tweet end a title change? Wrestling fans have seen some serious social media meltdowns between wrestlers, and in the following case, it appears to have killed a tag team's push. You may recall the Forgotten Sons debuted on SmackDown and seemed to be headed for a major push against SmackDown Tag Team Champions The New Day. That is until Forgotten Sons member Jackson Ryker tweeted his support for President Trump. The tweet generated considerable controversy since Ryker made it during the renewed focus on the Black Lives Matter movement. Unfortunately, the backlash against Ryker affected his teammates Wesley Blake and Steve Cutler, as the team have disappeared from TV. During a recent edition of the Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer discussed just how much Ryker's tweets seem to have affected both him and his teammates. They were going to get the tag team titles, and now we haven't seen hide nor hair of them, and I don't know if we will. That was an unfortunate tweet for sure. But do you think WWE overreacted to this tweet? Why should your political opinions ever affect your push in WWE? Be sure to let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.